think drag should be for everyone. No, I don't necessarily think everybody should be on a stage. You know what I mean? If I pay my $5, if you gonna kick, bitch, make that leg straight. All right, honey.
Come on out.
Is this real grass?
No, this is AstroTurf.
You know what? Nothing that beautiful can be
Just a TV
real.
secret.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Oh, well, cheers. Thank you for
Cheers.
coming. I just want to start off by saying congratulations, or as they say, congratulations on winning RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars. I want to know, take me back to when you were sitting with your sisters and you hear that you're the winner. What did that feel like?
It's so crazy because when I think about that moment, I just remember we filmed everything a year ago, right? Mm-hmm. And they film all of us winning. So you don't know who is going to win the show. And in my head, I had been telling myself the entire time, win or lose, I'm going to be the same. Mm-hmm. And when they announced that I won, I was like, what the fuck? You know, like, what? I was like, is there like a twist or whatever? Yeah. And you were screaming at me saying, girl, you won. You won. It's real. Yeah. And I'm just like freaking out. Yeah. And I know all of them are probably like, maybe a little part of them were like, that fucking bitch. A lot of people go into the competition wanting to win, course, you know? Yeah. For me, it was more about getting to come back and getting to have the right representation of who I am. And I felt like when I left a year ago from filming, I felt very completed and I was content. Right. And I said, anything else that happens after this is a cherry on top. I did not expect to win. So it was really, I didn't know how to react to it. Right. So I'm so used to losing, you know? Yeah. So Tanya Tucker said it, that losing was easy. It's the winning that you have to learn how to do.
That lip sync, did you trip? Or were you tripping into a stunt?
The whole thing behind the lip sync was on season 2, when I had to lip sync against Morgan McMichaels. Yeah. I did a lot of acrobatics because that's like what I'm known for. Like that is my bread and butter. Is I'm a gymnast and I incorporate that in my performances. Well, the narrative of this is not a gymnastics competition, this is a lip sync, competition. It haunted me for 11 years. And I'm like, wow, like I've learned to do less of that when I'm on stage. And I said, they've already seen that when I lip sync with Manila. Yeah. I said, so I'm going to come out in a gown for the final lip sync. And I want to prove that I don't need to do all of that, that I can be just as entertaining without that. Yeah. Well, it was the gymnastics that actually saved my fucking ass. Oh, okay. I slipped on, I had a boa with me and it was on the ground and I slipped on that and I just felt my whole life flashing before my eyes. Everything was in slow motion. It was like, no. Like one of those like movies. Yeah. And the only thing I can think of is like, okay, so I tripped and then my foot caught the bottom of my dress. Yeah. So I went to step, but my foot was there. Luckily it came out and whenever it landed, I was just rolled and I was like, pose, bitch, and sell it. Do not make it obvious that spooked me.
Well, that's the thing. It was like watching as a viewer, it was like, yes, you know what I mean?
It's just an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it was, and like in a split second too, because you like, you know, but also for us as viewers, it was like you like, and then you breathe. Yeah. And I feel even you telling me that like it haunted you for years, I feel like moments like that are the universe telling you that is where you belong. And I'm going to show you why this is part of your toolkit and part of why you're so amazing. Because no shade to any of the other girls, but any other girl that could have been the downfall, but because of your gymnastics training, you pop right back up into it.
I sure did.
So I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
I would love to talk about, the judges mentioned this a lot, and you even talked about it on the show, about your growth from your first time on Drag Race to where you are now and where you were a year ago when you filmed the show. Can you talk a little bit about like what that growth has been like, both on set and off of set?
Drag Race was kind of like the chapter in my life where I started growing into myself. Mm-hmm. You know, it was the beginning stages of my transition when I got on to season 2. Mm-hmm. And it was a very awkward phase of the transition. It's like you don't quite look either or, and mentally you're on the right path, but physically maybe it's not all there yet. Right. And I knew that once it aired, like I think it was like 8 or 9 months after we had filmed, that it started airing, and I had already started my transition. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like looking back at one of the most awkward phases of your life. Mm-hmm. And I had seen so much growth from just that time, from the reunion, from when we had filmed like 9 months ago. Yeah. And I've just constantly been growing as a person. And I think once you let go of all the expectations that other people have of you, and you just listen to yourself, and you just liberate yourself, you're constantly growing into a person that you can live with. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because there have been lots of times where I'd just be by myself and I would be so miserable because I wasn't living in my truth. Right. And now I'm like, I can stay at home all by myself and just really enjoy who I am. Yeah.
There's something that you said on the not red table talk, the pink table talk. Where is it? I want to read it so that I don't mess it up.
Can I tell you what it is?
Yes.
Don't let that hurt child make your grown-up decisions.
Oh, that's what it was. I remember watching that, and I feel like me and a lot of other viewers were just like...
When I was growing up, I lived in my mom and my dad were divorced. I lived with my dad and my stepmom, and my dad was hardly ever there. He's very abusive. My stepmom, she never had kids, so she's all of a sudden a stepmom to these 3 kids. So there was a resentment that she had toward us, and she was very abusive. She tried to kill me twice when I was a kid. Yeah, it's insane. And it was hell growing up like that. And I feel like not only being queer, growing up in a household where there's racial tension there, you're hearing things that you know are not right, and knowing that like I'm different, and living in a home with people who, if they know that you're different, they're going to treat you worse than the way that they talk about people that they don't understand. Yeah. It wasn't until I realized that I have the power to let that go. Yeah. Nothing I say or do is ever going to change the fact of what happened in my past. But I'm an adult now, and I'm in control of my life. And I don't want that kid that was so hurt, that kept me from moving forward in my life, to make any more decisions for me. I'm going to own who I am and just move forward. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they can let that go. And it's a simple sentence, right? And it's just like, oh my God, like it makes so much sense. And then everything goes away. Yeah. You feel free. You're able to move forward. And you're like, wow, why didn't I know this before? Yeah. You know?
Most of that self-talk, or as RuPaul would say, inner saboteur, is just the hurt child trying to make their way back to the adult self. And so when you said that, I was just like, wow. I needed to hear it.
Take the good stuff and run. Yeah. You know what I mean? Take the good stuff and run. Yeah. Because the other stuff is just baggage.
I saw a tweet that you tweeted recently, and you clarified, you said, to be very clear, since so many people want to make a big fuss about it, I was the first ever trans contestant to ever be on RuPaul's Drag Race franchise. 2009, they casted me knowing I identified as trans, and I didn't present female at the time because I was in the early stages of my HRT. Why do you think it's so important, like, to just calm the noise down? Because, you know, there's always the trolls online that want to say a bunch of different things.
Well, first of all, it does not matter who was the first. But I just feel like when people would talk about my win and me being on the show, and a lot of people didn't remember me, like newer fans of the show, they didn't remember me or whatever. Yeah. I never talked about being the first anything ever of my career. Because it doesn't matter. I'm a person just like everybody else on the show. But if we are going to talk about it, let me set the record straight. There is a lot of talk about how the franchise, there was transphobia and all this and that. But they knew I identified as trans during casting. And they allowed me to be on the show. I talked about my transition. You know, I had not been presenting as female. So it would be kind of weird on this new show about drag to introduce this character that's still kind of trying to figure themselves out, you know? So it was a blessing in disguise that we didn't really touch too much on it because I didn't really have all the information and knowledge about it. I was learning how to be myself at that moment. But yes, I am the first trans person to ever be on that show, on any franchise. The only time you've seen trans people on TV, they were being made fun of. They were making fun of themselves. They were being killed on TV shows, and just misunderstood. Right. I feel like I was part of that snowball effect that people started having conversations about trans people. There were people like Candace Kane that I seen on Dirty Sexy Money. There is a documentary that really changed my entire life. And it's called Trantasia. Erica Andrews is on that, Mimi Marks, Maria Roman. And I never got to see trans women who did drag, who lived like normal lives during the day. And I was like, oh wow, like so I could just be normal and still be a performer too. Because I did everything else that everybody else wanted me to do to try to make them feel comfortable and happy or whatever. But I realized they never was truly happy. And I was never happy. So I was like, you know what? If I don't have a person around me that supports me or loves me or whatever, I don't care. I need to do something for myself. And it wasn't until that moment where I owned myself and I was willing to lose everyone around me to just be me, that I started gaining respect from the right people and weeding out all the wrong people in my life. I'm still doing that. You know what I mean? But yeah, that documentary really changed my life and I'm so grateful for it. So that's why I think it's super important that there is representation or trans people telling their stories because it can really change someone's life. Yeah.
That is sometimes, as queer people, our biggest fear is being alone and being left out. But just hearing, like, when you love yourself and when you know yourself better than anybody, that is all you need. You have to love yourself first in order for everyone else to follow suit. So just to hear that, I'm like... getting emotional, but like
it's okay.
Yeah, no, it's so great to hear that because there still are times where you feel like, oh, I need to be, you know,
be something more.
Right. As Drag Race takes over the world, it goes into a new conversation for new voices and new people that have oftentimes not even seen drag in real life. And I think it's important to, you know, talk about the fact that trans women have always been a part of the drag community and how Drag Race is kind of like just a version of what you would see at the club. So if you could talk to me about, you know, your club experience with other trans women in drag and what that means for the show and, you know, drag as a whole.
One of the first queens I ever met in person was a trans queen. And I just remember looking at her and being like, what the fuck am I looking at? And I'm obsessed. You know what I mean? Like the lashes, the perfect tits, and I'm just like, what is this? Like I never even knew or fathomed that I could see this in person. And then when I would go to the shows, it was the trans queens that just brought something. You forget about gender, and it just becomes about like, it takes you to a place that's not of this earth to me. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to be that. I want, you know, and I would love watching the boy queens too. But it was something about the trans queens that just really refined and finessed everything it was about a woman and just multiplied it times 10. And we live in a world that's full of misogyny. When you go into those clubs, it is the women who are worshipped. It is the femininity that is celebrated. And I just absolutely love it. And it inspired me, you know, and I, whenever I'm on stage, I try to think about those performers who inspired me. I want to give off the same impression that those queens gave to me when I was watching it. Like, oh my God, like.
And you do. Who is allowed to do drag?
First of all, you don't need permission from anybody to do anything you want to do. I think drag should be for everyone. No, I don't necessarily think everybody should be on a stage.
Tell them.
You know what I mean? If I pay my $5, I want to see a bitch who, if you're going to kick, bitch, make that leg straight. But some of the most entertaining drag is new drag. Yeah. With the girls are just trying to get it together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I think that's one of the things that's so beautiful about our community is that we don't all start as beautiful butterflies. You know what I mean?
I was a mess. Like, I was an absolute mess. I didn't know how to tuck. Yeah. I don't even think I wore eyelashes. I was climbing on the walls. You know, I was just, like, constantly moving. Yeah. I was, like, I'd been doing gymnastics forever. So I was, like, I would go into these clubs and I would act like I was at the gymnasium. And people would, like, live because I'd be wearing high heels doing it in a wig. Yeah. And I remember my first drag mom that I had, her name is the Goddess Raven. She took me to an out-of-town booking in Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, my gosh.
And she's like, all right. She's like, okay, this is my new daughter. You guys are going to see a lot more of her in the future. Yes. You know? And so I went out and did my thing. And by the time I was done, I think I had lost my hair. My titties had fell out. And she was like, well, I said you was going to see more of her in the future. I didn't necessarily mean that. And I just thought that was so funny. So I had to learn how to get those titties in there really good so they didn't fall out. But yeah, whenever you're a mess like that, there's so much room to grow. Right. And I feel like even now, like I'm still learning how to perfect my drag. Yeah. I mean, I just remember seeing Ru in like 93. Yeah. Supermodel of the world, and just thinking, most gorgeous queen I've ever seen. Then Drag Race came out, still, most gorgeous queen I've ever seen. Now, how the fuck does she look even better? And then you look back and you see makeup in 93 versus now, and it's just like, it's a whole different world. We've evolved in the artistry. Yeah.